My name is Juliana Nykolaiszyn with the Oklahoma State University Library. Today is Monday, July 20th, 2015, and I am in Garvin County, Oklahoma to interview Luann Waters as part of the Cowboys in Every County Oral History Project. Luann, thank you so much for joining me today.
Thank you.
Well, let's learn a little bit more about you. Could you tell me the year you were born and when you were born?
Okay, I was born in 1952, March 2nd, in Pawhuska, Oklahoma, which is in Osage County.
Okay, and tell me a little bit about your parents.
My father is named A.A. Sewell, was what he always went by. He was actually named after both of his grandfathers, Amgrid Asbury. Now you can understand why he went by his initials. And in fact, most people didn't know that the initials even stood for anything. But anyway, A.A. Sewell was a county agent for OSU. He did his got his bachelor's degree from Oklahoma A&M. Later went back, got a master's. My mom was essentially a housewife, though occasionally worked outside of the home. Not really until I was probably in junior high, though, did she do that. But quite the homemaker. Always had a pot of coffee on and something baked to be able to serve to guests. So we started out, I lived in town in Pawhuska till I was about 4, and then we moved actually out onto the county fairgrounds. And there was a small house right in the middle of the fairgrounds. Talk about hog heaven for a little kid. Though I had restrictions of how far I could wander, as needless to say. But the county fair was in our backyard, spring livestock show, what else? The cavalcade, international cavalcade, racehorses that were wintered there every winter by people using the track that was there on the fairgrounds as a training facility. So definitely not your typical small town background being on the fairgrounds. So, but we lived there until I was in 6th grade, and then we moved to Hugo in Choctaw County. And my dad was still with Extension Service. We lived in town when we first moved. That was really a change. I wasn't used to having neighbors on either side, but it was kind of fun in its own way. And that's Hugo is where I graduated from high school, and then went to school at OSU. And I know there's a lot of gaps in there that we can fill back in.
Well, going back to your early years in Pawhuska, your father was assigned to Osage County?
Yes, yeah. It was his 3rd assignment in the state. Actually, he was a native of Arkansas, had been in a junior college I'm trying to remember if it was in Magnolia or El Dorado, but played basketball. And he got recruited and got a scholarship to come to Oklahoma A&M and was on Henry Iba's first team at A&M. And so that's what brought him to Oklahoma, but the first season that he was there to play, tore up his knee, and back then all they did was put an ace bandage on you and say, sorry kid, you can't play anymore. So I never thought to ask him, I'm sure that meant the scholarship went away, but that he was able to find, student jobs or something, that because he stayed at OSU, or what's now OSU, and finished his degree. And at first was a ag teacher in the eastern part of Oklahoma, and then eventually went into Extension Service. And that's where he spent all the rest of his career. So,
how did he meet your mother?
They were, I'm trying to remember if he was actually working in the area of Stroud, that's where her family was living at the time, and that they met there. I've got one cousin that's old enough that before he's gone, I need to pick his brain. It's all those kind of questions you think, I wish I'd asked my parents, just how did you meet the first time, and never thought to do that. But cousin that's old enough that he would know those stories. But they met there in the area of Stroud, dated for a while, and got married, and had 2 sons while they were in the eastern part of the state, Coweta, Stroud, Wagner kind of area. And then it was in 1948 that they moved to Osage County. So they were there for a while before I came on the scene.
Well, you mentioned when you lived on the fairgrounds, You had boundaries. There were certain places you couldn't go or venture out past. Can
Yeah.
you describe that for me?
Well, as I got older, the boundaries widened. First it was within the fenced yard, and then it was within sight of the house, and that's pretty much as far as I was supposed to go by myself. My mom used to tell this story to everybody that the dog that we got when I was, I guess, about 5 or so, that she'd go out and call the dog, and whatever direction the dog came from, she knew where I was. And so then she'd have an idea of, and then would call me in. But the dog would answer quicker than I would, so she'd always call the dog first. And but it was a great location because I got to have a horse and had sheep for a 4-H project, and we had chickens, and started out with a couple of dairy cows that were actually my brother's. But then I got to have a calf from one of those cows as a 4-H project, so had plenty of room to be able to do any of that sort of thing. Had a pet goat that had been given to me by one of the horse trainers because they kept some goats in with the race horses to help keep them calm. So, yeah, it was kind of an ideal situation.
Tell me a little bit about early chores growing up.
Do you know, I was lucky on that. I don't know that I can really say that anything specifically were my chores, probably until once we moved to Hugo, and then it was rather than having other people around the fairgrounds that helped, feed cattle or do that sort of thing, that then it was, okay, you take care of the cats and the dogs and that sort of thing. And chickens and sheep didn't make the trip with us, and was supposed to take care of my horses. Because when we first moved, we just rented a vacant lot that was about maybe a couple of blocks away from the house.
Mm-hmm.
And so did that sort of thing. But then by that age, 6th grade, 7th, 8th grade, 2 girlfriends of mine there in the Hugo area had horses. And as long as at least 2, if not 3 or more of us were together, we could go off on horseback, and we were all over the county. And I think all of our parents thought, well, safety in numbers. If somebody gets hurt, there's somebody else to, go for help. And so we were pretty well given free rein. Either that or we took it and we just didn't always tell our parents where all we were going. I think maybe a combination of the two. But that was a fun time too. But the boundaries at the fairground, of course, and those boundaries would modify. If the fair was going on, you stayed in the yard unless I was with somebody, because there were so many more people around. Mm-hmm. I think back and wonder how my mom, because she could be something of a worrier, how she managed to let me have as much free rein as she did with all the strangers that could be around her. But then come to find out, I had lots of people watching out for me too that I didn't always know. It's kind of like even when you're growing up in town, you're raised by a village because everybody keeps an eye on you. Well, I think that happened even out on the fairgrounds as well.
Well, you moved to Hugo. Tell me your first impressions of Hugo as a young woman.
Well, one of the first impressions was for the whole family. We moved, I think it was in January, and it snowed. And here we've come from northeast Oklahoma, and we're used to snow, and there's maybe ½ inch, for sure not more than an inch of snow. And Hugo had come to a stop because no one that far southeast at the time really knew how to drive in snow, and we were really getting a chuckle out of that. But and why this sticks in my brain, when we first moved, we're getting everything unloaded in the house. I had a pet parakeet, and the house was so cold that we knew the parakeet wouldn't last as we were getting moved in. So it's how I met one of my neighbors right off the bat. Went next door, knocked on their door and said, "Hi, we're your new neighbors. Can my parakeet stay in your house until we get the heat on?" So, and still have friends from that family all these many years later. So, yeah. But it was really different. We moved in 1964. Hugo had not integrated their schools yet. It was still very definitely Little Dixie, which was way different than Osage County at the time. So that was a change. Pawhuska had one central grade school, Hugo had the city divided by wards, and so the one semester that I was in 6th grade, you only met a fairly small group of folks, but then when you hit 7th grade and everybody went to what was then junior high, all of those ward schools came together, and that was different, just being introduced to all that many more people at the time. And it was right along and through there that talk was finally going on in the community of that they were going to have to integrate, and difference of opinions was something. So, but overall, nice town, lots of nice folks. Things were different. Hugo at the time, being south of Kiamichi Mountains, didn't get any Tulsa or Oklahoma City television stations. K10 and KXII out of Ada and Ardmore were the only local stations, and we actually had cable, which was unheard of back then, but we had cable TV, and all the stations were out of Dallas. So that kind of gave a whole different view of what news that you heard and what was going on, and so we had a little exposure to a big metro area, but it wasn't within Oklahoma that we were exposed to, so by television. School experiences, I started out in band in junior high, playing clarinet, because that's what one of my brothers had played, and that's what we had. And then freshman year, switched to baritone saxophone.
Wow.
My band director said we had way too many clarinets, and he needed saxophone players, and he thought that I could carry the baritone saxophone, which I now look back on, I think that was a compliment, but I really enjoyed it, because by playing saxophone, I got to be in stage band in high school, as well as marching and concert band. So, and band was a wonderful experience. It was like our own particular club, and it went across grades, so it wasn't just the people from your own class, and so that you met other people within the school. And that was an experience too.
Any other activities you participated in? Were you still involved in 4-H? Or?
No, pretty much not. Up through junior high was still in 4-H. They didn't really have a high school program. This predated when girls could be in FFA. And so interest switched even stronger to horses. Still had that interest all the way through, well, still do, though had my last horse now probably 13 years ago, but still have an interest in horses. But was in science club, let me think, band took a lot of time being in all the different areas of that. But horses and band was a whole lot of, did lots and lots of reading. I've always been a big reader. So, can't think, beyond those with extra competitions or field trips and things that we got to do within that.
So you were the baby of the family?
Baby of the family.
Okay. Did your brothers go to college?
Yes. Oldest brother graduated from Oklahoma State. The other brother went there up to what would have been his senior year, but then moved to Arizona. Never did complete a degree. And in fact, I always tell people I grew up in a household that OU stood for Other University. And my dad was on the board of directors for the Alumni Association at least 2 different years. I think this was when I was in high school. He had 100% membership for any OSU alum in Choctaw County. He had them all as members of the Alumni Association. And that was really a star as far as he was concerned, because there wasn't any other county that had ever done that. I'd be curious to find out if any county's done that since, but that was something that, anything OSU related, and that's probably, that'd be as far as other activities, was if there was a home football game, we went all the way from Hugo to Stillwater. This predated Indian Nation Turnpike. You're talking easily 5-hour drive. And you started, and especially for him to make the alumni meetings, which usually I think started at 9, 10 o'clock in the morning, that it wasn't at all unusual that we were leaving the house at 5 in the morning to get there for the meetings, and then would stay for a football game because they'd always have those the time of home games. And then we'd make a different route on the way home and go by way of Oklahoma City because my mom, one of her sisters, lived in Midwest City, and so we'd stay with them on Saturday night, get a good family visit in, be home by Sunday night. So, and I can still remember doing homework sometimes on the way home with. Used to still have lights that would turn on under the dash, not just the dome lights, and I would be finishing homework on the way home on Sunday nights sometimes. So because I'd put it off until then. But so yeah, went to OSU a lot. Oldest brother's 12 years older. Was 12. He just passed away a couple of years ago. Was 12 years older than me. The other brother was 8 years older. So even by the time that they were in college. Yeah, I was getting lots of exposure to OSU. And in fact, I hadn't realized at first my freshman year, I had a couple of people in my dorm that kept coming and asking me questions about stuff on campus. And I was like, I don't, why are you keep asking me that kind of stuff? I'm a freshman too. And they went, really? We thought you knew where everything was, where all the buildings were and all that sort of thing. And I said, no, it's just because I've been coming up here for so long. But class questions I couldn't answer necessarily. Because that kind of stuff I hadn't gotten into yet, but yeah.
So, did you always know you were going to go to college?
Pretty much. I think if I had said for some reason I didn't want to go to college, that probably would have been all right. But interests that I had early on, probably by 6th grade, maybe even earlier, thought I wanted to be an archaeologist. And then on into high school, started thinking about, well, no, maybe veterinarian. And so I actually, when I enrolled, was a pre-veterinary major in the College of Arts and Sciences. I actually did talk to, I don't remember if he was a dean. He was high up in the College of Agriculture. Visited with him. Questions that he asked me then would have gotten him in a lot of trouble now. It was like, well, why are you wanting to be a veterinarian? If you do make it into vet school, you're keeping a space from a young man. You'll want to stop being a vet and have children. On and on and on. And I thought, I think I'm glad I'm in the College of Arts and Sciences. So, but I did talk to College of Ag, but yeah. I thought that was pretty strange at the time. That it's basically 1970 and those kind of things were still being tossed out there. But
did you look at any other schools outside of OSU?
No, it pretty much, that's, if I was going to go to college, that's where to go. And because especially if I was going to become a veterinarian, go to the college that's in your home state, because it's harder to get into vet school than it is med school. And it was close enough. I knew I didn't have my own car, but I'd get to see my parents because they'd be up for every home football game. And so it was the logical choice. And it was further away from home. Most of the people that I was in high school with that went to college went to Southeastern at Durant. And that was as far away from home as most of them had ever been. I can still remember there was one fellow that, another gal and I and this guy, maybe it's when we went to take our ACT test. And we were outside of the county. And other than when he was in football and was on a bus going to games, it was the only time, as I recall, that he had been outside of the county on his own. And that seemed unusual to me too, but he probably wasn't the only one, just the one that I knew of. So, but yeah, OSU I knew that's where, if I was going to go to school, that's where I'd go.
What year did you graduate high school?
1970.
Okay. And then you enrolled at OSU?
Yeah.
Okay. So where did you live on campus that first year?
Actually, first 2 years, Wentz Hall.
Okay.
10th floor. And really enjoyed it. It was different. Again, closer company than what you're used to. And you have some neighbors that are mindful of that you're trying to study or you're trying to sleep. And there's others that by the time they made it back to the dorm, they were still in a party mode. So, but overall, it actually went pretty well. So, and I enjoyed being in Wentz.
What was the campus atmosphere like in the 1970s?
Oh, I think in the early 1970s, everybody was trying to decide, do we want to be rebellious like we hear that they're being everywhere else? And now that even started in high school. I wore my hair long and straight and might occasionally have a serape vest on or one thing or another. And so I had later years friends said, oh yeah, you were our resident hippie for our high school. And I thought, whoa, well, you haven't really seen hippies if you thought I was the resident hippie. But somewhat questioning, still very middle America, more conservative, but a lot of people bringing up questions of, what are we doing to the environment? What are we doing to each other? Some of those kind of things were going on. Young women especially were, finding more freedom than they'd ever had a chance to experience before, and learning how to modify that and not get yourself in trouble. So, yeah. But overall a good atmosphere, pretty cohesive. Still you saw a difference between, as we were all referred to and called ourselves GDIs versus sororities and fraternities. But I had lots of friends in both of those. And my oldest brother, well actually both brothers, the oldest brother had been a Kappa Sig. And so, you found a little difference of opinion and backgrounds, but usually on a friendly rivalry sort of thing. On campus, off campus approach.
So, kind of walk me through how you chose your major, because it did change.
Yeah. Was pre-veterinary, did arts and sciences, but also was interested in history and arts. Of course, had to have a certain amount of humanities kind of things too. And was staying with the pre-vet until chemistry, and I found that we didn't necessarily get along. And I still was considering pre-vet, but really sat and looked at my options of what else did I want to do. And decided that for me to make it into vet school, I was going to have to give up all of these other things that I felt were as important to me as vet school. So I switched to what was then a zoology wildlife option major. Semester, I think, after I graduated, wildlife became its own standalone major. So, but then I, from pre-vet, went in definitely into the zoology department and was doing classes in wildlife ecology. And so was still within the science field, still animal related, and went along with that option. And didn't have to take very much more chemistry after that, which was a bright spot. Still had some hard classes, but things that my brain wrapped around easier than it did with chemistry. So,
any classes or professors that just really stand out in your mind?
Oh yeah, Dr. Brian Glass. Took mammalogy with him. He had forgotten more about mammals than I could ever hope to know. The one thing I remember about him in class one day, he forgot his notes. And rather than going back to his office, he said, well, what we're covering today, I can do without my notes. Well, we decided after that, if he ever forgot his notes again, we were going to make him go get them, because since he was doing things literally from memory, he was going much faster with what all he was talking about. We couldn't keep up with him on trying to take notes on whatever it was. And so I thought, and this guy, he's got knowledge that is just beyond. And good life experiences, because he had been in Africa doing collections and all sorts of things. And he was a really nice man. And later when I worked for the university, I considered him a friend. I mean, he was still, oh, you had been my professor kind of approach, but was a real sweetheart. But so Dr. Glass, let me think. My advisor when I switched into wildlife ecology was Ted McKinney. He was a great professor. Later, after he'd left Oklahoma State, he got involved in political aspects and actually ended up spending time in prison. I don't know what happened to him after that, because he and some other people were doing a protest at some power plant or something, and but he was a wonderful wildlife professor whenever I'd had him. So, and I think his encouragement was one of the reasons that I enjoyed the wildlife field. of going into that for a major. Let me think, any others? I'm trying to think of my humanities instructor, because she was another one that I was impressed with her field of knowledge and her openness to other cultures. Conway's coming to mind, but I don't think that's correct. But yeah, she was amazing. And let me think, who else? For undergraduate, probably those would be two of the ones that would really stand, or three, actually, with McKinney in there, three of the ones. But had a lot of really good classes. Marilee Rollins was, I don't know if you would have...
Dance instructor.
Dance instructor, yeah. Marilee Rollins, when I was a freshman, women still had to have physical education. Used to be ROTC for the guys and physical education for the girls. Well, ROTC had been dropped as a requirement for the men by the time I was a freshman, but the women were still required to have physical education. That was one of the protests that by the time of end of my sophomore year, of course, after I had met all the physical education requirements, that requirement got dropped. That seemed to happen to me a lot. I'd get all the requirements and then they'd change them. But I took modern dance as my required physical education class with Marilee Rollins. I loved it because when I had been little, I took tap and ballet and had been introduced to modern dance about my junior year in high school by my physical education teacher. And I thought, oh, this is a class I want to take. Well, I enjoyed it so much, then I took another class with her and took another class and was in the spring dance concerts for forever, it seemed like. And just kept going back and really, really enjoyed those. So, and she's an excellent instructor. Yeah.
Was there a particular building you'd have the majority of your classes in, or were they just all over the place?
Oh, for sure by sophomore year, Life Sciences West. And I always thought it was funny when you'd, like be back home and somebody'd say, oh, well, my sister's daughter is in school at OSU and, have you met her? And I'm thinking, what does she major in? And, well, she was a business major. Well, no, because that was on the far other side of campus from where I was all the time. Mm-hmm. So, especially once you got into your major classes, you were pretty much in one or two buildings. Mm-hmm. And it was like, oh, that's the other side of campus. I don't know anybody over there. So, but, yeah, Life Sciences West it's been in my OSU experience since day one, because then later when I worked for the university, I was officed in Life Sciences West as well. So, but yeah.
Well, you lived 2 years in Wentz. Where'd you round out?
I moved off campus, lived in a little triplex house, apartment. There was one apartment upstairs, two downstairs, and with girlfriend that I had met, gosh, was it just the summer before or 2 summers before, and that she was from Skeety, Pawnee area. We're still best friends, but we decided we wanted to live off campus and found this little place on Husband Street. So it was close enough that we could walk and or ride our bikes because neither one of us had a car. And we weren't all that far away. It was still a Safeway. Let me think. I think it's Hastings Books maybe is where the Safeway store used to be. And she had a red wagon that we would go to the grocery store and load all the groceries in that red wagon and then tow them back home. And if we had anything that was too heavy or needed to get a lot of stuff, the guys that lived across the street from us would give us a lift wherever we needed to go. So it worked out pretty nice. Yeah, but was there on Husband Street for basically a year and a half because I managed to get out a semester early between 2 sessions of summer school and doing one intersession, and had one semester that by luck, because it was just random who ended up in a special section of freshman English. What was it? English 1113, I think. That they experimented, I guess, for a couple of semesters in that you had the option of contracting to do not just 3 hours, but could do 6 or even 9 hours of English credit. And that you did whatever research paper or whatever was required in the other classes, though you still met the same hours of class. You just did essentially, I don't know if it was even really outside assignments, that they just kind of mixed it all in. Partly, from what I understood, was to see how many students would even take advantage of it. And I thought, gosh, get 9 hours instead of 3? Not have to, yeah. I mean, you paid for the hours, but then you weren't having to do those other semesters. So I contracted for 9 and got them. So that semester, instead of, 16 hours credit, it was, way more. And all of those things combined, I managed to get out a semester early. So got out in December, had 1 more hour than I needed for my bachelor's, and had 4 hours towards graduate credit. And was a nervous wreck about the last month of the semester, because I thought they're going to come back and tell me, oh, we're sorry, we made a mistake. You need to take 1 more class. And in fact, a story that I've shared with lots of folks through the years. I was using a student loan to go to school, and I'd gotten a letter that I was, all of us that did student loans were supposed to come into whatever office and talk about our student loan. Well, that letter didn't specify that we might have to, or that we were expected to pay insurance for once we graduated, that if, something happened to us, that university still got paid back, or whoever was the payment was going to. And so when I went to this meeting, I didn't have a checkbook with me, and was trying to explain to the person this, well, I can go get my checkbook. I need to call my parents, but I'll come back and do that. Well, luckily I don't remember the fellow's name, but he was the boss over all these people. He was walking through and heard me say something about leaving and not paying was, I think, all that registered with him, and he blew up at me. And when are you students going to expect to follow your responsibilities, and on and on and on, and if you don't do this, you won't graduate. Well, what I heard was, you won't graduate. And by the time I got back to my apartment, called home, I guess I was pretty much a basket case, because later my mom said, I kept talking to you on the phone. I was afraid to let you get off the phone because I sounded so distraught. And but she finally had me calm down. And well, then she called my dad. Well, with my dad being on the director, or was a director on the Alumni Association, he knew who to call, and he started with Dr. Com, who was president of the university at the time. And basically, kind of said, Bob, what's going on up there? I'm sure in not that mild a language. But they were friends enough that he said, well, that he'd check on it. Well, come to find out, I hadn't been the only student that this guy had, kind of ragged on with, who do you think you are, kind of thing. And so anyway, I don't know that it cost him his job, but I guess he got a reprimand out of it, and I still paid my insurance and still, graduated. But there for a few days, I was, like a puddle of confusion and distraught and whatever. But did get finished in December. Back then, they didn't do December graduation ceremonies. I would have had to gone back in May, and I thought, I'm too busy, not going to bother to do it. Just didn't go through graduation ceremonies at that point. And then, started a summer job and went on from there. But I think back, would I have wanted to put myself through that again? And I thought, yeah, because I got out of school and had other experiences that spring that I would have missed out on otherwise. And later when I was an advisor, I'd help students figure out, could they manage to get out a semester early, and or were they better not to for classes that they were expected to take, and some of those kind of things. But yeah, all these many years later, that all still sticks in my brain too.
Did you have an on-campus or off-campus job while you were a student?
Several different ones. When I lived in Wentz, I was a desk clerk for a while. Then trying to remember if it would have been after I was living in my apartment, I worked part-time for one of the faculty members, basically doing a lot of dishes. He was doing water research, and so any of his collection vials and things had to be washed multiple times, and finally with distilled water, and so that it wouldn't have an impact on his studies, and so did that sort of thing. Then later was teaching assistant. So seemed, maybe not my freshman year as far as an on-campus job. For a while I even took in ironing, and I thought, oh, I hate this. I'm not getting paid enough to make it worthwhile. And that was way before most wash and wear kind of stuff. And so tried that for a while and decided I could find something else. Did some babysitting. So a collection of things to help give a little bit of supplemental income. Mm-hmm. Being a desk clerk was fun. Actually even enjoyed the job working for the professor, just because it gave me a whole nother view of what all could be involved with science too. So yeah, always seemed to be working part-time.
Were you involved in any on-campus organizations?
There was a ZPG group, Zero Population Group, that I was involved with them. Was a member of Sierra Club for a while, and actually continued with Sierra Club actually when I lived in Tulsa later. Trying to think of any others. Well, we had a students group, Zoology Undergraduate Students Organization, ZUSO. Yeah, and because that predated now, or when I was there as an advisor, they had a Wildlife Society group, in which they still do, a student chapter of the Wildlife Society. But since we didn't have a full wildlife major yet, it was everybody within zoology. And the one thing I really remember about it, we got to do a field trip to the St. Louis Zoo, because I'd never been there before, and that was really a neat experience to get to do that. So did that sort of thing too.
What'd you do for fun?
By my junior year in college, I actually had even managed to get one of my horses, actually two of my horses, moved to OSU. Had to ride my bike, how far? A couple, 3 miles to get to the pasture where I kept them. And when I told my advisor I was going to get to bring my horses to school, he was like, well, there went your grades. And I said, and if anything, actually my grades got better, because I got better about scheduling my time, of making sure that I had to have the studies done before I could, go have the enjoyment of going horseback riding. And I think that getting out and being away from campus and all helped clear my head to keep the studies going better too. So, but did that sort of thing. Go to dances a lot. Love to dance. I guess that'd be a lot of it. Football games. I always enjoyed going to football games with my folks. And occasionally made it back to Hugo. Usually pretty much just, Thanksgiving break, fall break, and then the break in between semesters.
How would you get home?
Usually I'd either catch a ride with somebody else that was headed back that way, because there were a few other folks from Hugo that had come to OSU, and so would bum a ride with them, and depending on how it worked out. I don't remember if my folks ever had to come and pick me up, other than when I was moving out of the dorm or moving in kind of thing, or to the apartment. And I would just catch rides with somebody else. Checked once about trying to use the bus, and bus service back then, it was going to take about 13 hours as I required, because they were going to stop in every little town between. So I never rode the bus. Called and checked on it once, but never did that. I decided now I could stay at OSU or wait and see the folks when they came up for football games. Yeah.
Tell me the year you graduated.
High school 1970, got out in December of 73. Mm-hmm. So as far as finishing undergraduate, that spring was back at Hugo. Actually helped establish a 4-H horse club with a wonderful group of gals, because I thought I could maybe be a leader for them, and some of the things they were wanting to learn, I wanted to learn as well. And I applied for a summer job with federal service and ended up getting a job with U.S. Army Corps of Engineers at Hugo Lake when Hugo Lake was first becoming a lake. In fact, that summer of '74, the lake wasn't even supposed to be full yet. They just closed the dam, the gates on the dam that January or February, and it had been estimated it would take 3 years for it to fill, and it was full by May.
Wow.
So it was probably one of maybe not the rain like we've had in this past month, but still a lot more rain than what had been expected. So that was one of the reasons they decided they needed a couple of park technicians. The park areas weren't even finished yet, but people were already using the lake. So they wanted some extra presence to get to visit with the public and advise them of what regulations there were and that sort of thing. So did that for the summer. Found out there was a good chance of getting on permanent. I had planned on going back that fall to work on a master's and thought, good chance at a job, maybe take the job, worry about the master's later. And so I did get hired on permanent. That fall was still at Hugo Lake, and then January of, what would that be, January '75, then moved to Tulsa and worked in the district office. So did a change in direction at that point as far as wasn't immediately back at OSU.
Okay. Well, kind of take me through your career after landing in Tulsa.
Landed in Tulsa, first went, let's see, it was biological technician, part technician, or biological aid, I guess his first technical title. Biological aid, part technician, that summer and fall. Applied for a real estate training program within Tulsa District Office is what got me to Tulsa. Worked in that. There were, was there 3 or 4 of us that were starting out as trainees in that program. I did that for a while, then found out there was a chance of going into personnel work as a trainee. Applied for that and got it, so did that switch. So still within Tulsa District Office, but it's like each one of these moves I was having less competition because there were fewer of us going in, and worked my way through all the different branches within personnel. Was able to get promoted pretty much a lot faster than I would have otherwise on grade level that I worked. So was in Tulsa District Office from January of '75 till March of '79. And August of '76 had gotten married and continued working in Tulsa, though I was commuting then from Tulsa to Morrison, northeast of Stillwater, until that December of '78 that we bought a house out in the country. So I was actually 15 miles closer to Tulsa and had ended up even in a carpool. Was still doing personnel work, but when it got to a point, for a variety of reasons, that the only good part of the day was the drive to and from work, I thought it might be time to look to do something different. And so then at that point considered going back to school at OSU to work on a master's. So quit in March and started back to school in June, working on a master's in science education. Because I had checked with, what were the different options. Here I had a zoology, wildlife degree. Now married, knew that it wasn't like I was going to get to go off and work in the wilds of wherever because of husband's career as well. So I thought, all right, how can I use my science degree? And so found that I could get a master's in science education and get a teaching certificate and be able to teach. And I so decided to go for that option. And went back and actually first went back just to see about getting the classes I needed to get teacher certification, and luckily got an advisor that said, well, you could take graduate level classes to meet all of those requirements and get a master's at the same time. And I went, I like the sound of that.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, so that worked great. And so started in on that approach. So was full-time in school that summer and fall. That fall, heard that there was an opening for an advisor in the zoology department for the wildlife majors. So thought, what the heck, go interview, see if I can maybe get that. And did, and so started in that position full-time advisor, which actually was the first full-time advisor the zoology department had ever had. They had always had faculty, or the person that had been in the position before I was just part-time. And one of the reasons I heard they decided to get somebody full-time and to have it not be just faculty members, they realized they had had some of their wildlife majors as seniors that had had as many as 4 and 5 advisors. And it wasn't the students changing majors, it was that faculty member, they'd get assigned to a faculty member and that person would get to go on a sabbatical or whatever different kind of situations. And they were, changing advisors so often it was like they didn't even know who to go see. Or that sometimes faculty, because they were faculty first, didn't keep up with what the requirements were, and or, oh, your student can't do this, well, you can substitute this, and so it was costing the students some hours and some money because they were maybe taking a class that didn't meet requirements. So I started as an advisor in January of 1980, full-time. Worked out nice, though, because then my tuition went to half cost.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. So it slowed me down a little bit on finishing the degree, but it was worth it for the difference in price. And so did go ahead and finish the master's in science ed.
And what year did you finish up that degree?
Actually completed, had all the coursework, I think, finished by the end of spring semester of 81. But then didn't do my comps until that summer. And so was actually a summer of 81 graduate.
Okay.
Part of the reason we put the comps off was that they were going to happen right at the same time that my son was due to be born. So decided if I hadn't had him yet, I wouldn't feel like sitting through comps. And if I had already had him, I wouldn't feel like sitting through comps. So delayed it until that summer. And so that worked out all right, too.
And how long did you remain at OSU?
Was an advisor from January of 80 until December of 84 when we moved down here.
Okay.
And so I had several students that were going to be graduating that following May. We made sure that we had graduation requirements met, signed off on for everybody. So students that had even started as freshmen the fall of 80 had me as their advisor all the way through and had all their paperwork signed, so whoever came in after me couldn't throw them for a curve. And so, I felt like that I hadn't left them out short.
What brought you down to Garvin County?
My husband's job. He was also, or is also, an OSU graduate. He had been an ag econ major and had gone into banking, not baking. I do the baking. He's a wonderful griller, but he's a great cook. But he was in banking and had the opportunity to come down here to be president of a bank. The bank where he had been working in Morrison, he knew he was never going to get to be any higher up in it because there was the guy that owned the bank and then the vice president under him, so that even when the owner would retire, that he'd still not ever get to be any higher than a vice president. So we moved down here in December of 84, actually the day before Christmas. He had actually started commuting or was coming down here starting in November, but I was able to finish out the semester, and then we moved. And and he's still with that bank now, 30 years later.
Wow.
Actually over 30 years now, so. Yeah, but that's a change in his job is what brought us down here.
And is it the bank in Wynnewood, or?
It's the State Bank of Wynnewood. Okay. There is another bank in town. It's he likes to kid them. They are a branch now. When we first moved down here, they weren't a branch of another bank, but they are now. So, and there was also a savings and loan that was here when we first moved down. So, but yeah, the State Bank.
So when you moved to Garvin County, what were you getting involved with down here?
Well, when we first talked about coming down here, and he mentioned Wynnewood, and I tell people that I'd never even heard of it until we moved here. And it's an interesting side note, after we had been here for, probably a couple of years digging back through old family photos, found a picture of my grandparents on their, it's labeled on the back, it was their second date. There's 3 other people in the picture with them, and it was taken in Wynnewood, Indian Territory.
How about that?
So there was a connection that I just hadn't known about yet. I found out my mom's oldest sister was actually even born in Wynnewood, so yeah, small world. Well, when we first moved down here, once getting settled in and keeping up with, at the time, a 3-year-old turned 4 shortly after we were down here. I thought, okay, I'm in Garvin County, have a son to take care of. What can I do with my degree and my background? And I went and talked to the local paper. At whatever point, I'd have to look back at records to see, but asked them if they'd like to have a wildlife column. And so that, they were like, well, we've never done anything like that, but write us a couple and we'll see what the response is. So did one about winter birds and a couple of other things. And then what people I had met, I called all of them and I said, please call the newspaper and tell them you like the column. And they must have gotten good response besides whatever I sent to them as well. And so then for, I'd have to look back and figure out for sure how long. I did a weekly column on things relating to wildlife and the outdoors. And actually doing that, I then found out I applied to Outdoor Writers Association of America and qualified for requirements. And so I'm still a member of that, though I still don't do regular writing, but because of classes and or speaking programs and things that I do, still qualify as a member. All these many years later too. So yeah, so it still kind of kept my hand in the whole wildlife thing. And gosh, for a while it seemed like a lot of trips back to Stillwater to stay connected with folks, and then completely made the transition on down here. That August after we had moved here, my dad passed away, so then that's probably even what made me then be commuting to Hugo to help my mom with things. And so that made a difference then too, being back and forth over there a lot too. But at least closer than what it had been when we were living at Morrison. So trying to think if there were other things, between working on the column and keeping up with the youngster. Did have horses here with me, and then wasn't long after that was going back and forth to Hugo a lot.
Tell me a little bit about your work with Ollie.
Ollie has got to be one of the best things that's ever happened for anybody over 50. Actually, even before Ollie, when I was working in Oklahoma City for the State Wildlife Department, because I started to work for them in August of '87. I'd have to 89 or 90, somewhere along in through there, I heard that OU had just seminars, one-time seminars that were called Mornings with the Professor on Tuesday mornings. So I'd even take a morning off from work, would drive north, stop at OU, listen to an hour-and-a-half lecture, and then would go on up to the office. So it was almost an introduction to Ollie-like, because OU still does that as part of their Ollie program now. But then when I found out about Ollie classes, and this was after I had quit working at the wildlife department. So actually it would have been earlier than that when I went to the seminars. But anyhow, I thought, wow, these sound interesting. Went and took a class, and I thought, really, I'll enjoy this. Because my idea is you never quit learning until you're dead. Or if you think you don't need to learn anything else, you might as well be dead. But anyhow, took the Ollie classes. After taking, 2 or 3 classes, I went in to their director and I said, I offer programs and things that I think will fit as an Ollie class. Do you have to be on faculty at OU? Because everybody I'd had as an instructor had been on faculty. And they said, no, we're open to anybody that wants to do a topic. So I actually taught for OU Ollie before I taught for OSU. Now, when I'd been working with the wildlife department, Ruth Ann, that is head of Ollie, now had been doing education outreach. And so between Leopold Education Project classes or other things, that Ruth Ann and I had worked together a lot. Well, when she found out I was teaching for OU Ollie, she was like, whoa, wait a minute. You need to teach for OSU Ollie. And whatever year that they started doing classes in Oklahoma City, I was one of the first instructors there, and we were happy when we had 6 people enroll in a class. And now much bigger program than that now. But I was a volunteer at the Oklahoma History Center as well, so I got to count my hours when I was teaching because they were history-related topics, and since it was being held at the History Center, I got to count my time of teaching for OSU Ollie as my volunteer hours there at the History Center. So, but I've done, well, sometimes multiple, because we do about a 2-year rotation, teach a class, wait a couple of years, then offer it again. Lewis and Clark, Chisholm Trail, cemetery symbols class, pioneer food history, or even just a standalone Dutch oven cooking class, and have done all of those. I've done the cemetery symbols class actually at Stillwater one semester, but all the rest of it's either been at the History Center, one time at Epworth Villa. So, and I'm scheduled to teach cemetery symbols this fall for OSU Ollie at the History Center. So, but also do journaling classes is one other topic that I've done. So, kind of, and I keep telling myself I'm working on 2 more topics, of one on Beatrix Potter and one on Laura Ingalls Wilder, and just haven't gotten to the point that I feel like I'm ready to do those yet for anybody else, but still doing research on those areas. So, but Beatrix Potter, what I'm wanting to cover on her is not, well, yeah, we'll talk about the children's books, but that she was quite the naturalist and was one of experts in England on studying fungi and did some amazing drawings. And so it's more for her naturalist aspect and her then being a farmer in her later years. And all those farms that she owned all were donated to, what do they call it? It's like a national trust. So you can still go visit her farms even still today, and they look like when she was there. And I'm intrigued with that history as well as the naturalist aspect of those. So
You're still staying very busy. Still educating.
Still educating. Yeah. Sharing what I've learned with other people or learning more on my own. Yeah. So, and still taking Ollie classes myself. And have really enjoyed those. Yeah, there's always something new to learn. And it's one of the reasons I've got so many books. Yeah, avid reader.
Well, tell me a little bit about your son.
My son was born in March of 1981. He also went to OSU, but didn't graduate from there because he met his first wife. They got married, or were wanting to get married, knew they had gotten involved with a church, or were active in a church in Pauls Valley. And they thought, well, if they transferred to OU to finish their degrees, they could live in Pauls Valley, be involved with the church, and commute to classes. And I can still remember when he came home to, Mom and Dad, I need to visit with you, and I'm, wanting to transfer to OU. And I normally don't have a poker face, but that one day I think I did. And when he went through the whole explanation, I looked at him and I said, son, you can't go to OU. And he was like, why not? And I said, nobody from our family's ever gone to OU. But he graduated from OU, so, but his heart's still with OSU. He keeps saying he's considering maybe going back for a master's if he can, and in and around work, and get it through OSU. So it's a family tradition. And, but he was in school at OSU, then graduated at OU, lived out in California for a while, has been back in Oklahoma now for a couple of years, had gotten divorced but remarried this past spring, is quite happy living in Stratford, and works at State Bank of Wynnewood.
There we go.
Yeah, so another family tradition going along those lines. So
your only child?
Yes, yeah, okay. Only one. Told everybody when he was little it was all I could do to keep up with him, so didn't want to try to keep up with any others. Yeah, so, but he's real active in community aspects, does programs at the schools, sometimes bank related and other aspects. Currently president of our local historical society. I think that's how I maybe got roped in to be secretary-treasurer for the local historical society.
It could very well
Yeah,
be.
I think it had a big aspect of it. But yeah, we both enjoy history, so but that's a big thing about that. So he's a really good public speaker, very enthusiastic. You know, I love hearing compliments on him. So, but he is, I think, a special young man, though I know I am prejudiced, so, yeah.
Well, could you talk a little bit about how attending OSU had an impact on your life?
Oh, definitely. Actually, excuse me, it even goes back before I actually got to OSU. Programs like 4-H that goes through OSU. In fact, I still share with young people to do, be it 4-H or now also FFA, since it's open to boys and girls both, to do something like that so you get over a fear of speaking in public. I had not realized the difference that made until I got to college, and in one of my classes, in probably by junior year, when I was really into all the major courses, that we had a class that our professor wanted all of us, and it was a small class, but we all had to get up and give a public presentation. And there was one of the guys in our class that we were all up to the point of making bets of whether or not he was going to pass out from fright when he had to get up before the room. I had never seen anybody that terrified to get up before, even people that he knew, though sometimes I find that's harder than getting up and talking before folks you don't know. And I thought, why am I not afraid of that? And I thought, all those talks and demonstrations that you were expected to do as part of 4-H. So that OSU, I think, had an impact as early as that. Of course, you know, besides my dad's livelihood and where the paycheck was coming from. So, but was always welcomed even as a young kid, you know, when I'd go along with my parents for him to be at alumni meetings. You know, looking back, I can tell I was being groomed. I didn't know any other school to go to because everybody I'd met, you know, was from OSU or saw how friendly they were, how welcoming, that sort of thing.
Did you have any interactions with Merle Rogers?
Oh, yeah. And have actually even taught a Ollie class that his daughter was in. Now, talk about hitting multi-generational. Merle was a wonderful, wonderful person. His wife was really sweet, too.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Because if I needed anything and I didn't know who to go see on campus, I'd go see Merle at the alumni office. That was when the Alumni Center was still officed on, what was that considered, second floor of the Student Union.
Mm-hmm.
Just across and down the hall from the theater. And, yeah, went in there all the time. A lot of times just to stop in and say hi and visit. Yeah.
Did he put you to work?
Oh, no, because I already had part-time jobs at other places. He might have wrangled me into that otherwise, but now, not necessarily alumni related, but when I was an instructor for freshman orientation. Yeah, so even was, as an upperclassman, was then still talking to incoming freshmen, even as an undergraduate of, you know, here's kind of the ins and outs, and so that probably even set me up later for the advisor's job of, you know, figuring out, especially as an advisor, I worked within the system, but figured out how sometimes to get around the system.
Mm-hmm.
And yeah, because once you were an advisor, you found out that you had at least a little bit of leeway on substituting and adjusting for students and figuring out what was best for them. And because, yeah, there was, that's another whole side story.
Do you see an OSU impact in Garvin County today?
To a certain extent, yeah, extension service that's down here. Garvin County, you're just far enough into the state. In fact, when we first moved down here, I thought, how did I end up in the heart of OU country? You know, when you first move, it's like where are the fellow OSU graduates, and that we eventually find each other. I have to say I'm sorry that I haven't gotten involved with an alumni group here in the county like I should have, but when we first moved, it seemed that everybody was not an OU graduate, but definitely an OU fan. And so when you're, cheering on for the orange and black, as it was really referred to when we first moved, that you felt like you were kind of the lone sheep out in the storm sometimes. But through extension service is probably what most people would notice. There are a lot more visible OSU graduates, I think, in the county now, or that people realize, yes, there is another school to be able to go to. And I think the profile of OSU is much higher now. And I know the branding success, I think, is one of the best programs the university's ever come up with. It's raised the visibility, but it's also brought money into the university for scholarships and that sort of thing.
Mm-hmm. It appears that many OSU alums have a loyalty to the university. Any ideas of what sparks that kind of loyalty?
My first guess would that OSU always feels like home. I'm sure folks from other colleges feel the same way, but maybe it's even what some of the majors are that people are. Agriculture, science majors tied to the land. I don't know. It's a good question.
What is it for you? You've been groomed at a very early age to bleed orange and black.
Yeah, I think part of it is having been familiar with it so long. It wasn't just go there for 4 years, and then you're gone. I've talked to a few folks that I went there for school, but it's like they never go back. And I thought, well, I've been there all my life, kind of thing. So that may be some of the difference. When my dad passed away, we set up a scholarship. Set up a scholarship in his name. And sorry.
Oh, you're fine.
Then just a year and a half later, when my mom passed away, we added her name to it. And so, let's see. He died in 85. We started the scholarship in 86. And once a semester ever since. We don't do summer school, but spring. Well, I say once a semester. Actually, it's just once a year. We do one scholarship a year. Started out, it was in the zoology department, and because that's where the wildlife major was. Now, he had done his degree in ag, but I thought, well, okay, I get to direct this. It's still going to OSU. We're going to give it to a wildlife major. And then here a few years ago, the wildlife major moved over to College of Ag. And at that point, and I have to give him credit for this, Lauren Smith, who's the department head of what now is integrative biology, no longer zoology because of the variety of things that their majors do. He was like, well, yeah, we're fine. It makes sense for the scholarship to go with where the major is. He says, but would you want to do anything still in zoology? And he was smart enough to ask. And I said, well, yeah, because that was my home department. The other was my major. And so now not only is there a scholarship for an undergraduate in wildlife, but there is it's called Grant in Aid, I think is what but it's basically for a graduate student within the College of Zoology, or with the department, not the college, the Department of Zoology. So a graduate student now for the last how many years. gets a scholarship too. I think that may be part of it for OSU grads, and I see the same thing from information I get from other schools, that they'll give money back.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Well, before we close out today, you've been in the Wynnewood area for quite some time.
Yeah.
Can you talk a little bit about changes you've seen in this area since you've been here?
Oh, well. Little towns are having a hard time. Businesses that were here when we first moved have closed, but most of those were either family owned, and as family dies off or don't have kids that are wanting to carry on those businesses or that sort of thing. So, yeah, little towns statewide, not just in Garvin County, have to really work at staying alive. When we first moved down here, it seemed like a lot of the people within Garvin County only knew Garvin County. When we first moved to Choctaw County, it was the same thing. You didn't know anything outside of Choctaw County. Indian Nation Turnpike and Hugo Lake, I think, made big changes in that because it brought a lot of other people in to the area. We've seen ownership for the refinery change through the years.
Is that the main employer in the area?
Yeah, that and state school had been. Of course, now state school at Pauls Valley is officially closed. I heard just within, I guess, this spring, end of spring, that they've officially closed it now. But the refinery, though, there's still a lot of other businesses and lots more oil-related things in the area now than what there used to be, as far as smaller companies doing things in the area.
Mm-hmm.
But it's not like there's a wall around Garvin County anymore. That people realize there's been a lot of people from other parts of the country have moved into the area, so that you've maybe got some new ideas or new experiences that people are bringing in, but still occasionally you'll find that there's a few folks that it's like, no, we want to stay the way we've always been. Well, that doesn't necessarily work anymore. You have to figure out other ways or better ways or different ways to do things to stay viable.
Mm-hmm.
So, but still lots of friendly folks, people that'll help you any way that they can. I think that's an Oklahoma thing. So,
well, we covered quite a bit in a short amount of time. Is there anything else you'd like to add? Something we've missed that you'd like to talk about?
Oh, gosh. Not that's coming to mind. I know as soon as you walk out the door, I'll think of a half a dozen things probably. Or if you think of extra things in either. I know, of course, this is oral interview, but any supplemental information that you'd need. But yeah, as you can tell, OSU, near and dear. Dad went to school there. Actually, family tradition on my husband's side of the family goes back even further. His grandmother and his grandfather both went to school. So it takes it back even an additional generation. Though, kind of a fun side story on my dad, I found out from one of my cousins just a few years ago. His dad had left home in Arkansas and became a minister and moved around a lot. My dad went away to Oklahoma to school, then stayed in Oklahoma to work, and found out from my cousin that his dad and my dad were kind of considered the black sheep of the family because, and I think by our grandparents, but it only makes sense. You think, well, yeah, probably their parents were upset that they had left, but neither one of them was the oldest son, and the oldest son was who was going to be taking over the farming and agricultural aspect. So they had to find something else to do. But I always thought that was kind of fun to find out that, because they had left, I don't think that their sisters ever considered them the black sheep, but anyhow. But definitely went far afield from being in southwest Arkansas.
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah. And But yeah, through the years, even before I ever attended OSU, with my dad's involvement with the Alumni Association and alumni banquets, or getting senior students to come to banquets to recruit them, and anytime that we went to home football games, even junior high and high school, we'd always have somebody else with us because he'd offer to take somebody, come and go to a game with us and we'll show you around campus. Yeah, that sort of thing. So, and one of the girls that was in the 4-H horse club at Hugo after I graduated from college, her dad had been in 4-H in Osage County with my dad. And we always thought that was kind of fun that we had two generations with a 4-H and OSU connection along those lines. So, just little side stories.
Good memories.
Yeah.
Good history. Strong connection.
Yes.
We love it.
Yeah.
Luann, thank you so much for spending time with us this morning.
Thank you.
We appreciate it.
Yeah, you're welcome.